You know that type of person who suddenly becomes quiet when something hurts them? The one who says very little, maybe just, I'm fine, but you can feel that something deeper is going on underneath. From the outside, it can look like distance, like coldness, or even like they don't care enough to respond. But the truth is, that silence is rarely what people think it is. There is a whole internal process happening that most people never see. And if you've ever been that person, you already know that being quiet in those moments is not a choice you carefully make. It's something that happens to you.
When emotional pain hits, especially when it's unexpected or overwhelming, the body reacts before the mind has time to organize words. It doesn't always come out as anger or tears. Sometimes it shows up as stillness, a kind of internal shutdown where everything slows down. Your chest might feel tight, your thoughts become heavy, and trying to explain what you're feeling feels almost impossible. It's not that you don't want to speak, it's that the words just aren't there yet. And that can be frustrating, especially when someone is standing in front of you asking you to explain yourself.
What most people don't realize is that this response is deeply rooted in how the human nervous system works. When something feels emotionally intense or threatening, the brain doesn't just switch into fight or flight. There's another response that often gets overlooked, the freeze response. This is when the body essentially hits pause. Instead of reacting outwardly, it turns inward, conserving energy and trying to process what's happening in a controlled way. In those moments, silence is not avoidance, it's protection.
There's also something happening on a neurological level that makes it even harder to speak during emotional overwhelm. The part of the brain responsible for language and verbal expression becomes less active when emotions become too intense. That means even if you want to explain how you feel, your brain is literally making it harder for you to find the words. So when someone says, "Just tell me what's wrong," it's not always that simple. For some people, it's like being asked to speak a language that temporarily disappears under pressure. But this pattern doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's usually something that develops over time. Think about it. No one is born suppressing their emotions. Children express everything freely. They cry, they shout, they show pain without hesitation. But as they grow up, they start learning which emotions are accepted and which ones are not. If someone grows up in an environment where their feelings are dismissed, ignored, or even used against them, they slowly begin to adapt. They learn that expressing pain openly doesn't lead to comfort. It leads to more discomfort.
So instead of continuing to express everything out loud, they begin to hold it in. Not because they stopped feeling, but because they learned that feeling out loud comes with consequences. Over time, this becomes a habit, a survival strategy, a way to protect themselves from being misunderstood, judged, or hurt again. And even years later, in completely different situations with different people, that same response can show up automatically. What's interesting is that while someone may appear quiet on the outside, their mind is often extremely active on the inside. Silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, it often means the opposite. There's a deep level of thinking going on, replaying the situation, analyzing every detail, questioning their own reactions, trying to understand what they feel and why they feel it. It's a process that can be intense and exhausting, even if no one else can see it.
They might be asking themselves questions like, did I overreact? Why did that affect me so much? What do I actually want to say? If I speak now, will it make things worse? This kind of internal dialogue takes time, and for someone who processes emotions this way, speaking too soon can feel risky. Because once words are said, they can't be taken back. So instead of reacting immediately, they wait until they feel more certain about what they truly want to express. There's also another layer to this that people rarely talk about. Sometimes the silence isn't just about protecting themselves. It's also about protecting others. When emotions are fresh and unprocessed, they can come out in ways that are harsh, reactive, or even hurtful. And some people are very aware of that. They know that if they speak too soon, they might say things they don't fully mean. So they choose to stay quiet, not to punish the other person, but to avoid causing unnecessary damage to the relationship.
This connects to something psychologists describe as the window of tolerance. It's the range where a person can think clearly and communicate effectively while experiencing emotions. When someone is outside of that window, either too overwhelmed or too shut down, communication becomes difficult. For people who go quiet when hurt, they often recognize, even if unconsciously, that they're not in the right state to have a productive conversation. So they wait, not because they don't care, but because they care enough to do it properly. The challenge is that this silence is often misunderstood. Other people might interpret it as rejection, disinterest, or emotional distance. They might push for answers, demand explanations, or take it personally. And while that reaction is understandable, it can actually make things worse. Pressure can reinforce the belief that their natural way of processing emotions isn't acceptable, that they need to respond faster, speak sooner, or feel differently than they actually do. But what they truly need in those moments is something much quieter. Patience. Space without judgment. The freedom to process their emotions at their own pace without feeling like they're failing someone else's expectations. When that kind of environment is present, something interesting happens. They open up more easily. Not because they're forced to, but because it finally feels safe enough to do so. And when they do speak, it's usually meaningful. People who take time to process their emotions tend to choose their words carefully. They don't speak just to react. They speak to be understood. By the time they express how they feel, they've already thought it through, filtered it, and made sure it reflects what they truly mean. That kind of communication may take longer, but it often carries more clarity and honesty.
In a world where quick reactions are often encouraged, where people are expected to respond instantly and emotionally, this quieter approach can be misunderstood. But it also has a kind of depth that is rare. It shows a willingness to reflect, to take responsibility for one's emotions, and to communicate with intention rather than impulse. So if you're someone who goes quiet when you're hurt, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means your mind and body have learned a specific way of dealing with emotional intensity. It means you process things deeply. It means you value understanding over reaction. And while not everyone will immediately understand that, the right people will learn to see it for what it is. They'll recognize that your silence isn't distance. It's a form of presence, a moment where you're trying to make sense of what you feel before sharing it. And over time, as trust builds and safety grows, that silence may become less necessary. Not because it was ever wrong, but because you no longer need it in the same way. And maybe that's the most important part to understand. This isn't about fixing something broken. It's about understanding a pattern that once protected you and slowly allowing yourself to feel safe enough to express things more freely when the time is right.